So as we say, we are simplifying spirituality. So it's about how we're treating the self, how we're treating the environment, how we're treating the water, how we're treating the plants, how we're treating the vegetation, how we're treating life overall.
Come link with me under the hero tree. Make a reason through every season. Speaking the truth for the youth. Maintaining the spiritual rules. Maintaining the spiritual rules. Maintaining the spiritual rules.
So welcome forward, African family, as we touch part 2 of this. As we say, we're talking about food, the continuation. So we say, out here in nature, it's overcast, but just the way we love it anyways, within nature, connecting with the rest of nature, because we also part of nature. So as we say, we are simplifying spirituality. So it's about how we're treating the self, how we're treating the environment, how we're treating the water, how we're treating the plants, how we're treating the vegetation, how we're treating life overall. How we're bringing negative energy, how we're bringing positive energy. Simplicity. So we talk about food being monopolized, the industry of food being monopolized, and food is being manipulated. But within the manipulation of food, we have to realize that it's not really new, because food have been manipulated throughout time. But it's like each time it happens, it gets worse and worse, because the nutrients are going down, and that is why we eat food. So if we ask why we eat, that's the reason we eat, to maintain ourselves so we can grow and be healthy and live as long as possible. So each time they manipulate food, the nutrients become less and less. But even within this time now, foods are also grown without soil from a technological point of view. So we need to check into these things. So the food are looking nice and pretty, but are they giving the body what the body needs? So we mentioned about GMO crops. If I have my organic, let's say organic farm on this side, and a GMO crop is grown on that side, and that the pollens or whatever is blown across onto my organic crop, then my organic crop is now changed. The genetical makeup of my organic crop is now changed to GMO. That's how dangerous it is based on what the research is showing, on the basis of food being manipulated. If we were to check, because I hear that banana used to be having more seeds in them. I know Papa have been through some manipulation over the years based on diseases, and they want to create the plants so it can protect itself from diseases and pests and insects and all these things. So one can look into we'll do some research on Pandia seeds, because I think most of the papas that we're seeing on the market now, in terms of, we're not seeing those small nice juicy papas anymore. There are some big papas. So we can look into Pandia seeds and we can see the amount of crops that is coming from those types of manipulations. So most of what we're eating, we're just eating trash really. We're eating for belly full for most of the times we're eating, and not so much body full. And when I say body full, I mean we're not getting the nutrient that the body needs to function in the way it's supposed to function. Beautiful butterfly fluttering around, you know. Yeah, so in terms of eating, what we need to be doing is research. We need vitamins and minerals. So these are the things that keeps the body in tune and function. So we don't be loggying around and feel lazy. So we need to be researching where we get the vitamin C's, where we get all these minerals and vitamins from, and then we eat accordingly from each of these groups. So if we hear about whole meals, so we should be eating from all the food groups for getting as much of the vitamins and minerals that the body needs. So we grew up eating based on taste. So we need to stop doing that. We need to be eating based on what nutrient are we giving the body. That's the basis that we need to be eating on and for. So most of the things that we eat and say taste good are not good for us, and the things that we shun and push away and say they taste bad are the things that are actually good for us. So we need to be checking into these things from an information standpoint, from a research standpoint, and then we have to take the mental along with that, because if nothing changes here, then nothing will change here. So if we are researching and knowing where all the things we need to be eating, where these nutrients are coming from, then it also helps us to be a wiser shopper. So in this time where we have this COVID-19 going on, craziness in the world, and we need all these minerals and vitamins to be boosting the immune system, and we know orange as one of the things we get the vitamin C from, but if we research and know that we can also get it from guavas and guineps and tambourines. So when orange is being sold for, let's say $1,000 a bag, you can go and get some guineps for $100, $200, some melon, some tambourine, just the same. Your neighbor have some guava, you can get some guava. So therefore you can be saving money to buy to get some other vitamins and minerals from a next food group out of that same $1,000. So you become a wiser shopper in that sense. So it's just having the information and the next thing of having the information, we need to be using it. Because having the information and not using it is just as bad as not knowing, really. So we need to be checking in with the self and ask the self, am I being good to the self? Just wanted to show you guys those birds right there in nature, you know, if you can see them. That's why we love to be out here, you know. As I said in part 1, if we go and search on these food industry documentaries, we will realize what's happening around at the back end of these businesses, and that's where our foods are coming from. So if we want to go back and talk about meats, some of these ground beefs and these things are old meats being grounded and do whatever they do to make them seem to be fresh again. And the steaks, they are using like food glues, using old meats and glue them together. And whether they want to use fresh blood from an animal or use food coloring to recolor those things and put them back on the shelf, and they are expired meats. So we need to be checking into these things. What are we bringing to the self? Are we eating for health? Are we just eating just because that's one of our natural function? We need to also be doing it from an information standpoint, so we can be saving time and money in terms of, I think some of us probably feel proud within the self that we know Dr. X and Dr. X because we have appointments and we are proud of these appointments. But we need to be realizing that if we're treating the body the way it's supposed to be treated, then we don't need to be setting these appointments and wasting time and money. Not speaking against the doctors, but doctors are there. That's where you should be going to, just to get a checkup to say, all right, everything is okay. But it shouldn't be a place that you're visiting and spending your money right in this loop, because you're not treating the self as the way it's supposed to be treated from a health perspective, mentally, emotionally. And then we don't only consume based on just chewing and swallowing. What are we looking at? What are we listening to? So we're consuming by way of what we're putting into the brain. And then if the brain is not functioning the way that it's supposed to function, then we are going to treat the body accordingly. So a lot of us like to have these takes. We are literally making mistakes with these things. And this is not me speaking against or telling anyone how directly they should be living in terms of should you eat meat or not. That's going to be a personal choice. I can't make that decision for you. But where is it coming from? How much of it are you consuming? As it goes, your meal should be a balanced meal, meaning you're getting nutrients from all the groups of food. But majority of us, for majority of our days, we are consuming the same thing over and over and over. And that's helping to make the body sick and lack of certain nutrients. So we're always feeling lazy and wants to sleep and all these things. So we need to be checking in with the self, doing the research. So again, the internet will go and search for all these things and go on social media and follow all these things. That's the same place we can get all this information from. We just need to be looking in that direction. So one of the places that we get information from a lot is the television, commercials. Within these things, there's psychological effects on the things we watch. So when they use these bright colors to advertise, those reds and yellows, it's a psychological attach because we associate these things with these colors. So they pulls us in and we end up to the places where they're sending us to get these products that they want us to be spending our monies on. And as it relates to advertisement, the target group is that age group that's always in the commercials. So if they want to be targeting teenagers, we see the teenage commercials. If we look at the medical advertisements, when they're talking about these pills and these things, we see mostly these ageable persons because that's the group they're targeting. They know those people are mostly the sicker ones within the society, so they use these advertisements to pull those set of people in to get them to consume these products. So we need to be checking into these things and see where we are being led to and being influenced to do to the self. So if we want to talk about the fast food industry, these things are heavily preserved. Do we ever stop to wonder why they're not running low on supply? Are we realizing that we don't really know anywhere that we can say, oh, that's where they get their chickens from, that's where they get their beef from, that's where they get their vegetables from? A lot of these things are being shipped from thousands of miles across the ocean, so they have to be preserved and to have, and when they get to their location, to be able to stay for a while as well. So I don't know if ones and ones know about MSG and high fructose corn syrup. These are things that are used in these things to keep them for as long as they need to have them till they reach to you or to us to be consumed. A couple of years ago there was an article in the newspaper, frog legs being imported. Where are those going? So we need to be checking in on what we're putting into this temple. Because if the gut is not healthy, then the body won't be healthy. If the brain is not healthy, then the body won't be healthy. And there are direct correlation between how we behave and based on what's going on within the body. So if the body is not healthy, it shows off the balance. We react, we are always angry, we are always upset, we are always stressed out. It has a lot to do with the food that we are eating and how it's changing or manipulating our chemical reactions. It's kind of like when a woman is pregnant and her body changes, her mood changes. And talking about pregnancy, women need to always be healthy, healthier than even us as men, because from that perspective you will be bringing a next life within you, and you will be feeding yourself to feed that next life. So the body should always be free from certain things. And this that I am about to say, it might sound crazy, but women need to realize that they're always pregnant. Yes? And it's the same thing like how we're always bleeding. But what happens is that we need to do something to bring the evidence of that. So if we scrape the skin, then we realize that we are bleeding, and that's the time we see the blood coming out. So in terms of the woman always being pregnant, then there needs to be a biological reaction to the man, the semen. So that's the time it becomes evident that you are pregnant. But you're always pregnant. So you always need to be taking care of yourself. And some of our women, they experience crazy menstrual cycles. A lot of these things have to do with your eating habit. What are you eating? It's changing your chemical reaction in the body, your behavior. Some of you ladies have abnormal menstrual cycles, whether it's up or it's down. A lot of these things have to do with what you're eating. So for years you're going through this thing and you're just taking it, oh, it's normal, that's what is supposed to be happening. But it has to do with a lifetime of behavior in terms of what we're consuming. Check it in, do the research. So we have this thing of, we run to the fast food places and wherever else we go and get these bad foods to be put in inside the temple. But we work so hard to get the monies to buy those nice cars and all these material things. But are we driving that car to a water pump to put water into the engine? Or where water is not supposed to go? So it's the same thing we're doing with the body. We're treating our cars and our material things better than how we're treating the temple. Because we know if we put water where water is not supposed to go in the vehicle, then it's going to break down. And it's the same thing we're doing with our bodies. So we drive the car to fuel it at the exact place it's supposed to be fueled with the right thing. And then we drive that same car to these places where we are consuming these bad foods. So we might go in the supermarket and get a soda. We might pick up a bun or a little cheese tricks and these things. But we're driving an expensive car that we're treating the way it is supposed to be treated and not doing that to the self. We need to be checking in on what we're doing, looking in the mirror, looking at the self and questioning ourselves and the things and the decisions we are making towards ourselves and the decisions we are making for our children. Because they are watching us, they are learning from us. They are always in training, just like how we were in training around our parents. Life itself is a continuous training process. We're always learning, we're always influencing. So in terms of what our children are learning from us, and we hear parents saying, him not like vegetable and him not like fruits and him not. But what were you eating when you were pregnant? Have you been given to them over a period of time? You can't suddenly be giving them the chips and these things and then suddenly want them to switch to these things. Because these things like the chips and all these little juices, as we talk about MSGs and high fructose corn syrup, these things are like parasites. Once they get into the body, you're hooked, and then there's just a craving for those things. And it can't be that you're sitting around your children and eating the bad foods and then trying to convince them to eat something else. They will want to be eating what mommy and daddy and whichever adult is around is eating, because that's how they are. So if we are eating from an information standpoint in terms of the minerals and vitamins that we're supposed to get, and then teaching our children those same things, they are intelligent enough to say, okay, that makes sense. So I want to be healthy, I want to be growing strong and healthy. So they will gravitate to eating based on information, knowing that they're getting foods that making them healthy. And they're seeing us doing the same thing. So they will want to be following what mommy and daddy is doing and grandma and grandpa. So I can still go to the supermarket and I see us as adults still packing those trolleys with these chips and these little juices. And if we do the research on high fructose corn syrup, which is basically in almost of all of these things, ice creams and everything that has to do with some kind of a sweetener. And these high fructose corn syrups are coming from these GMO manufactured plants and the MSGs, which are, these things are leading to cancer. So these are the things we're feeding our children on, and we wonder why at certain age before adulthood they are developing these illnesses, these diseases. So we want to check in terms of cancers and these things, where it used to be said that once you're an adult in your family, mommy, daddy, whosoever had cancer, then it's most likely that the children will have cancer. But it's been researched and now and been proven that some of it is also because of the adapting of the lifestyle of the parents. So you grew up in the home, whatever the parents was doing, whatever they were eating, you adapt that exact lifestyle, and so it is very likely that you're going to be developing whatever your parents had in terms of a sickness. So it's kind of like politics. You grew up seeing your parents or your whole household being voting for one side or that side, so you just adapted that from the thing of tradition. Most of us are just stuck in tradition, because I think within this time it might be a little bit different now, and some of us are coming away from certain things. But to say that you're having porridge on a Sunday is kind of a crime for some people, because you want to be seeing the rice and peas and the chicken and all these things. So some of us are stuck in the tradition, which is really not serving us really, and it's not a blame on our parents, because they were doing the best they knew how to do. But we are in the age of information now, which need to be researching and checking in with the self and see how much we're harming ourselves or how much we are being loving to the self. As I said previously, we need to be redefining self-love, and that self-love should mean we're not bringing harm to the self or our environment, because our environment is still the place that we are getting things from. So if we are putting bad energies or bad things into the environment, it's going to come back to us at some point. Simplification of spirituality. So in terms of shopping, we need to be reading those labels, because we will be seeing things like natural flavors and artificial flavors. But what are these things really? And there are lots of ingredients that we can't even pronounce in these things. So where are these things coming from? Why are they in our food? Why is it that we can't be whatever the food is? It's not just that's in the package. These things are heavily preserved, and those are the things that are harming us. So I also found out that vegetable oil, if we really do the research, we realize that it has nothing to do with vegetable. It's been said that it's been produced by the way of petroleum, the same things that we would use in our machinery or in our vehicles. That's the way they produce vegetable oils. All we need to do is be doing the research. We can make coconut oils for ourselves if we really want to be using oils like that. And if we take a look around, we realize that some things are not seasonal anymore. Some things we used to be able to only get when it's the season for that thing. We're seeing them year in, year out now, right around the clock. Are we not wondering what's going on there? So we need to be researching and checking in on what we're eating. So if we check the shelves in the supermarkets, we're seeing a whole lot of seedless grapes based on what we know naturally. All the foods, or majority of the food, especially the fruits, they are coming from seeds, and they reproduce themselves with these seeds. That's the intelligence of nature. It gives you all that you need to reproduce. So you eat what you're supposed to be eating, and you replant and you maintain for yourselves and the next generation and the next generation. But if we're looking around, we're not seeing some trees anymore, or we're seeing less and less of them, which means we would be ending up in a situation where we need to be going for these GMO stuff, because that's basically the agenda really. So one of the arguments is that they need to be producing food this way so they can guarantee that there will be food. But if we're reproducing from these natural seeds that comes from these foods that we already have, then we wouldn't need to worry about that. And as we mentioned about the food agenda, if we really check it, we realize that, as we say, the good food are expensive, the bad food are cheap. That's a part of the manipulation. So it's easy for us to get these things to harm ourselves, so we feed into the next industry of, let's say, the pharmaceutical thing. So we feed into the thing of running to the hospital and running to these pharmacies to be buying all these products. We have to be checking in on these things. So even in the sense of talking about farming and preventing insects and pests from eating away at our crops, if we do the research, we can find that there are weeds that we can naturally put between our crops that would keep away these pests. or the pests would just attack those weeds and leave the crops alone. So we just need to be doing the research on all these things. So we also have to understand that the world is filled with sick people mentally, that's creating sick people physically just to maintain a money industry. We have to be checking in to these things. So one of the next things that we're doing with food is that we might be getting the good food, but we're killing the food in terms of cooking. We're cooking things that we don't need to be cooking, like carrots and cabbage and all these things. And then the next thing that we're cooking for too long and at too high of a temperature. So we're killing the food really. Remember back in the day our parents used to give us the water that the food was cooked in. And that was possibly the best part of the meal, because everything was cooked out into the water, really. And then we were eating a whole lot of starch, really. Again, we're not trying to blame the parents. They were doing or working out what they had to with what they had. So, as again, we're in the age of information. We need to be researching and applying these knowledge so we can be treating ourselves better. And for those of us who have our parents still around and grandparents, we can also be using that information to help them also. So we are cooking what we don't need to be cooking. We are cooking for too long. We are cooking at too high of a temperature. And the next thing that we want to look into is the type of cookwares that we are using. If we research, we realize like aluminum and all these things, when they are heated at certain temperatures, then they start leaking or leaching off into the food, which is not good for our health. Just like aluminum in our cosmetics, not good for our health. But that's in the next video when we're talking about all those things. Yeah, and I know it might come down to economics, that the cookwares that we need to be using, again, the agenda of placing the good things out of reach based on economics. Cookwares like glasswares and ceramics and stainless steel, not so bad. Cast iron wares are not so bad, but they might be more expensive. But what we can do with what we have is to reduce the temperature, so we're not heating that material to so high of a temperature that it starts leaching into our foods. It's like microwave. We need to, if we're going to be using microwaves, we need to stop using plastics and these materials in there, which will be glassware or ceramics. So these things don't really leach off into food and they get the job done. So while we're talking about microwaves, and we're talking about microwaves, that's also harmful. It was said back in the day, based on research, that you shouldn't even be in the room when the microwave is being used. So you put whatever you're putting in, start it, and you leave the air until it's finished. So all these things. So when I said we are consuming by hearing, seeing, and all these things, what's in the environment, our skin is one of our biggest organs, and we consume as well through our skins. What are we applying? What's in the atmosphere? What are we soaking up through the skin? So just to touch on technology for a bit, everything is going wireless now. We have Bluetooth, we have wireless all over the place. So we're basically in a microwave environment really. And then we're doing the same thing with the food. So the body is being attacked from all angles. The healthier you are, it's the best for you. You will absorb these things less. So the Wi-Fi that we have, the Wi-Fi box that we have in our house, if we do the research, we can find ways of lowering the waves by covering it with a certain type of materials. Foil paper can be one of those materials. And then talking about foil paper, we're cooking inside a foil paper, aluminum foil, so that the temperature that gets heated at, then it goes into the food and we're consuming that. Back in the day, I don't know if people are still doing this, putting plastic over rice to steam it. That's the plastic is going into the food as well. So these are, as I said before, some of us are stuck in tradition and it's harming us more than doing good for us. No blame again on the parents. They were just doing what they know how to do at the time they were in and the information they had. I'm talking about the information that they had based on our ancestry, based on the things that they did without these apps and these wireless devices and the way they were able to come together and do certain things. Makes us, or we should be wondering, what if they had this type of information? Wouldn't they be even more powerful than they were? So what are we doing with the information and the technologies that we have? So if we want to go back to the shopping list, especially with tin foods, these things are heavily preserved as well, and we need to be checking in on certain information. Make sure you're checking the tins, make sure there's no dent on these tins. As a thing like tomato is acidic, and once there's a dent within that tin, then that acid starts breaking away that material that's in the tin and it's going into the food. So we need to be aware of all these things and be looking at manufacture date and see how long, because over a period of time, whether this tin is dented or not, that acid within whatever product is inside will be breaking away after a period of time. It's the same thing with water's being in plastic bottles. When those bottles are at a certain temperature, the plastic starts leaking into the water. So we need to be researching and checking on these things, so we know that we're being good to ourselves with the things we're consuming. So we need to be farming, you know what I mean, connecting with the dirt. The dirt is not dirty really. If we really think about it, that's where the food is coming from, and we're eating these foods. So we need to be connecting with the soil, taking off these shoes and all these things on our hands, being in the soil and reconnecting with nature, and we're feeding ourselves that way as well. And they somehow told us to be afraid of the sun, which is one of the greatest source of energy, with it through the combination of the earth and the sun and the wind and the water. That's how our food comes. So we need to be tapping into these energies as much as possible. And when it comes to the sun, as we talk about vitamin D, it's not that the sun itself gives us vitamin D, but it helps the body to produce this vitamin, and then it helps to break down other vitamins and minerals for the body to use it sufficiently. So we need to be checking into these things and doing things from a knowledge base more than just following or just going along with things. So the minerals and the vitamins coming from the earth. And I don't know if ones ever see anybody eating rocks or eating a little dirt, and it would be said that they are lacking some kind of vitamins or minerals. So there we go. So we need to be farming, possibly have children growing up not knowing how nothing is planted or how food comes. And they might not know this tree or that tree. It might be seen in a museum or in a picture from back in the day and say that was a whatever tree that was. So we need to be, these are the traditions that we need to be carrying on. The planting and the growing and the proper eating and the health consciousness. So we can't be talking about consuming and not touch on the bad liquids, what we call alcohols and the sodas and all these things that some of us as early as the morning, rum and boom and all these things that we consume round the clock, not knowing that we're bringing harm to the self. So whether we go party and we get intoxicated and we drive and kill ourselves, some of us end up in physical situation that we call relationship that we never wanted to be in, and it creates a kind of a crazy situation because we were intoxicated with all these things. Not saying one can consume these things, but at what level and what is the outcome at the level that you're consuming. So that, along with the smoking and all the other things that we're doing, because once something might be good for you, but once you start burning it, then the chemical reaction changes and it becomes something else, really, that's possibly negatively affecting the body. So even with our kings, with doing all these things, and when it comes to the bedroom and their female partners, they might end up boof buff, because they have been doing this thing to their bodies for so long. They become dysfunctional in the bedroom and can't perform the way they want to, so they take this out on the female, not realizing that it's something that they have been doing to themselves over a period of time. And I think most of us get caught in that thinking that we will be remaining this age forever. So we're young, we're just doing what we feel like doing, not realizing that should we live to a certain age, these things will be affecting us negatively in all aspects of our lives. So the liquor, the smoking, the fast food, the bad food, the microwaves, the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooths, everything, all of these things are at us, attacking us, and we are consuming them in various ways, not realizing how much we are breaking down ourselves mentally, spiritually, physically. That's what we're doing, really. So we need to be researching, checking in with the self. What am I doing to the self? Is this negative or positive? How will this affect me future? How will this take me out of this life? Probably most likely leaving my young child to grow up, not having my guidance to guide them to being positive and healthy themselves. We need to be checking in. So we might have heard the term ignorance is bliss, but for who? It's only a bliss for the person that wants you to remain ignorant, so they can have you doing what you're doing to be maintaining whatever they want you to be maintaining. So we need to be checking in on these things, questioning the self, looking at ourselves spiritually. And all spirituality is, from my perspective, is just bringing goodness to the self, to the surrounding, to all of life around you and everything else. That's it. So again, I am not here saying I am perfect. Things happened to me that led me down this path. So all I'm doing is learning and sharing, wanting us to be all performing at our best levels from a health perspective, as we're talking about food. So some of us might just see it as a cliche when we say let your medicine be your food and your food be your medicine, but nothing else is more true. Because if we really look into our lives, it's really food that keeps us going. So shouldn't we want to be consuming the best of what's out there? So if we really check into it, we should not be eating anything or drinking anything that's not putting the nutrient that the body needs inside the body. That's the bottom line really. And we need to be serious about that. And that's what we will be passing on to our children, and it becomes tradition for them to pass that on to their children. These are the things we should be thinking about, really. So we need to be questioning ourselves. Are we just following because society is doing the advertisement? We see popular people doing these things, and then we spend our time and our money on these expensive cars and these things, and then we're feeding ourselves the bad things, and then we won't be here to enjoy these things that we have bought. We need to be looking at these things and questioning these things. And there's also the argument, should we be eating plant-based or animal foods? But that's going to be personal. And one might say, from an ancestral point of view, they also used to consume meats. Yes, and when we talk about ancestors, we're not here and say all of them were good. They've always been good and bad. But within all of this is from a spiritual aspect as well. Some of them used to hunt and kill. But what would happen was you would give reference to this life that is helping you to survive as well. It wasn't just a carelessly doing these things. Reverence was given to the food to be consumed to help your life, to nourish your body. So it's a personal thing. I'm not here to say eat plant-based or eat, but we should be thinking about it from a health perspective and what it is doing to the body. Are we getting the amount of minerals and vitamins that we need to be getting for the body to function how it is supposed to function? That's what we need to be checking into. And if we want to check within the animal kingdom, look at some of the animals that don't eat meat. They're big and strong. The gorillas and the elephants and the buffaloes and all these things. They're herbivores. But also, just like with our side of things in terms of being human, within the animal side of things, there's also, let's call it a balance. You have the lions and the tigers and the hyenas and these things that do eat meat. Other animals. So, as the one I was saying going, so is above, so is below. So there's always kind of a balance. So all of these choices are personal, but we should be choosing these choices based on health and information and wanting to maintain that kind of a balance within the self. Yeah, so we need to be checking in with these things, and that's all spirituality we're talking about. Are we bringing harm to the self? Are we bringing harm to the environment, which will come back to us? And then what are we passing on to the children? What bad habits, what good habits, negatives and positives? So we need to be checking in with the self. And again, to our queens, you need to be cleansing yourself, as I mentioned. You're always pregnant. It's just that it takes a next element from the man to make that evident and bring forth a child. Yeah? So you need to be always be cleansing yourself, because you become the source of food for that child. And we want them to be coming healthy across to this side of the world. So the job is ours, and we need to be taking full responsibility for it. So again, I want to say enough love, enough respect to the African family. Continue to stay with us on this journey, where we bring hope to rise the vibration as we travel together on this path. So it's a blessed love. Again, Uncle Josh Neb. Peace, life, prosperity, health. Blessed love. Give thanks.
Come link with me under the Iroko tree. Make a reason through every season. Speaking the truth for the youth. Maintaining the spiritual rules. Maintaining the spiritual rules. Maintaining the spiritual rules.